Long time ago, I saw the same television show that millions of other guitar players saw. It was probably the single most important television show for a new generation of guitar players. God, this sounds like the Bible in the beginning. But when I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, I said, gee, you don't have to get in line and do steps like the Temptations. You can pick up a guitar and then you don't have to dance, and you can just, kind of do that. And you certainly don't need a band in back of you. Anybody can do it. Just learn 4 or 5 chords and bang. And I also love their gimmick. I love that everybody had the same hairstyle. It was fun. It's like then a single image brought to mind the group right away. You don't even have to think of their faces or who they were necessarily, just a kind of a style. Mm-hmm. And it was, the perfect group for the perfect time. They were just a step ahead, not too far. Just their hair was just a little bit longer than everybody else, and everybody went, any longer than that, and everybody thought they were bums or something. But at the time, it was just perfect. And also, they played neat-looking guitars. I had never seen a Rickenbacker guitar before. I never saw a Hofner bass before. Everybody was playing these big, ugly Fender basses. So it was a compact little band. It was a terrific-looking band. And so that was in '64, and then it wasn't until '67 that my mother went out and bought me a Kent guitar for $15 from some kid. She bought it secondhand, and the amp was a Premier amp with an 8-inch speaker, or it might have been a 10-inch speaker. And I used to turn that sucker up all the way to 10. Somebody taught me how to do a bar C, and I played Land of a Thousand Dances, Funky Broadway, every song that ever had one chord for the entire song. You know what I'm saying? So I said na 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 na, and just up and down strumming for hours and hours. And I tried different variations, turn the thing up, and then let the guitar touch the amp so that the vibration, goes by, and then you got sustain. And I couldn't believe it. I said, "Hey, Mom, watch this." She's holding her ears and it's bleeding. Well, at the time, a 10-inch speaker was louder than anything in the house, and we were kicked out of where we lived. And then the next, well, by that time I had sung with bands, sung with all kinds of various major bands like the Long Island Sounds, but bands that everybody's heard of naturally from Long Island.
Just singing, not playing.
No, the front guy. And at the time I sounded like McCartney. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here once again. Hello. This is George Addison of the Beatles on WMCA, good guys. WMCA was the big station in New York. And Mary the K's Swinging Soiree is the 5th Beatle. I was like, baby, whoa. So I'm really a child of that era, and I wanted to be famous. I never really cared so much about what fingers were doing. I just liked a tune if it grabbed me, if the subject matter was interesting or I related to, or if the chord or if the changes were interesting. I never gave 2 shits about John McLaughlin, because after I'd hear a John McLaughlin record, I couldn't go away and hum anything. It's like you're singing in school, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, and the teacher's saying, well, you got to do this homework. You don't hum a John McLaughlin tune. Maybe our brains in a million years will be able to do that, but not right now. So being the true primitive that I am, I quickly latched on to such classic groups as the Trogs, and even the McCoys, all the great Steve Cropper tunes, Midnight Hour, all those real nice, simple songs that you could learn instantly and just get a nice beat and back up and you're making music. Mm-hmm. Mustang Sally, all the great 3 chords. God, never more than 3. But such great variations on those 3. And so those were the first things I started to do. And then as soon as Hendrix came out, I was away. I went to a different place. I didn't care about the Beatles anymore. It was, here's this guy who's actually fucking his guitar and lighting his guitar on fire. I thought the man was insane. And then when I found out that he was coming to the country on the Monkees tour, this was the end of all things. So one thing led to the other, and then in 1969 I went away to college, and in 1970 I decided I wanted to write songs. And by this time I've been playing guitar for 3 years, and you fake it. You learn all the riffs that Mountain has. Bam, 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 and you learn.
That's a good song.
I love da 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 da. Whoa, what great riffs! And everybody can sit down and you can figure it out.
Right.
And I started making up my own riffs and writing terrifically memorable songs like Simple Type. The lyrics of which were, I was walking down the street one day, celebrating the Friday the 13th of May. Then I met a simple type who started to fight. I said, hey, can't you find a way? Do you have to keep on fighting this way? Real great songs that nobody gave two shits about. And I mean, about the 100th song that I wrote, I suddenly realized that not only is it just not enough to write a song, it also has to sound a certain way. Different groups sound in different ways. So a lot of these Beatles kind of songs that you heard were written around that era, from 70 to 72.
Oh, were they really?
Yes.
Oh.
The ones that you pointed out, I like that one.
Yeah, that was definitely the one. There was another one towards the end, Mr. Make Believe.
Yes. 70, 72, that era. And I was doing those songs in a band, in an old band called Rainbow, which was doing all the music, every single kind of music in the color scheme of the rainbow, some hard, some soft. And nobody gave two shits, nobody cared. And so in 1972-73, I met Paul Stanley, and we both decided that he liked the Byrds, and I never cared about the Byrds because I always hated 12-string, ding, 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 anything but strum. You got to strum that guitar.
Right.
If you do finger picking stuff, I said, gee, I mean, you're not hitting the guitar. You're just kind of. So it didn't appeal to me. But he loved 12-string, and so we exchanged ideas. In 1972-73, we noticed that the biggest bands in the world all sounded the same. In other words, Band X, you put on one track of Band X to the last track of Band X, and you can tell who the band was because they had something called a sound, which is exactly the thing that we lacked. And every band had an image. Led Zeppelin looked a certain way. There's no short guy with a beard and stuff in that band. It just looks a certain way. And the Stones don't have a blonde guy with a handlebar mustache in the band. They all looked a certain way. And the Temptations didn't have a blonde guy in it either. There was a look. And the Beatles didn't have a bald guy. They all had this, So we took, we kind of looked around. We started throwing stuff at each other and realized that you had to have a look, you had to have a sound. And who were the biggest bands in the world? The biggest bands in the world were the glam bands, the glitter bands. David Bowie, Alice Cooper, even the Dolls would just grab the press completely. They never really made any big dent in the music industry, but the critics loved him because he was something fresh and, not necessarily new, just, here's a different looking band. So we decided that we were going to be 4 guys, 4 front men, that were going to step up on the stage and put on the kind of rock and roll show we never saw. And we would be the kind of band. Did you want coffee too?
No, thanks.
Hey.
Oh, I got my glass behind you there. Pardon me. Please. Thanks.
We decided to be the kind of band that we never saw on stage. To make up for the inadequacy of being the Rolling Stones with only one Mick Jagger, to make up for the fact of being Alice Cooper with only one Alice Cooper. Because if you're Jagger or David Bowie or anybody else and you've got an off night, goodbye, the band can kiss itself dead. So the point behind Kiss was to put out easily accessible music that any garage band in the world could play. And the hardest thing for me is to sit down and write simple songs. It's hard. You sit down, first you got to pick subject matter that's appealing. You can't just write about she was lying on the bed and she dreamt nicely. Nobody gives two shits about that concept. I mean, she was lying on the bed and the middle fell out and so we met in her wet dreams or whatever. And the lyric has to be easily accessible. You can't say, and I came flying through the windows of your mind. And nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. So you have to be easily accessible, you have to write chord changes that you could hum. You don't play minors, thanks. Usually never play minors, never ninths. Can't do that because if you're 14 or 15 years old, what's the chord structure? Is it or is it or
Right.
So you've got to be able to hear the chord. Da 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 da. And so you got a Boston smash. And there's an art behind sitting down and writing da 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 for 3 minutes, and you got a smash song. Nice, that was nice. So we decided to put together a band that had all the visual image, all the visual strength of Alice Cooper and all the tons of groups that went out before that. We decided to combine that with the Who and smash guitars, and combine it with circus and Fire Breathe and sexual stuff, and do strip, all the strip shows that do that kind of drumming. Da 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 boom 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 boom. Dave Clark 5, hold the sticks the wrong way, get all the drummers angry, and especially when somebody does a riff, everybody does it. No subtleties at all. Everybody plays the same riff in the same scale, so what you get is a buzzsaw effect at 20,000 people, decibel level. And piss off everybody, including win the Rolling Stone Hype of the Year award in 1973, and then have them in 1978 beg you to put in your ads for the 4 solo albums, which is always nice. And the point, of course, of all of this is that people that grew up listening to the Grateful Dead in 1967 or 66 would not necessarily understand why the new kids that were born in 1963 and are now 15 years old don't give a shit about the Beatles. They care that Paul McCartney, that's his old band. And it's a different generation and all the rest of that. All of which is a long-winded way of saying that after 10 albums, or however many we've done, I don't even know how many, we're up to the point now where we can do whatever the hell we want to. Our second comic book is coming out for $1.50, Marvel Comics, on the same day that our 2-hour movie is coming out on NBC, September the 20th or so, on the same day that 4 solo albums are being released, on the same day, shipping 5 million in America only, making it the largest single shipment of records in the history of this planet, as far as we know. All of which is a roundabout way of saying that we've come to the point where we can do whatever we want, and there are no restrictions except those that are self-imposed. They always were self-imposed, and nobody told us ever what to do. It was, as a matter of fact, it was fighting upstream. Everybody was taking the makeup off, and we just kept it on and kept forging ahead. Genesis got rid of Peter Gabriel, and Alice took his makeup off, and Bowie became, your father, with a suit and tie, whatever. And everybody lost it, and Iggy stopped doing that, and he cut his hair, and he thought he was younger than he actually was, and all this kind of stuff. And the one thing that we single-handedly managed to do is bring back the concept of a generation gap within the youth culture. The older youths didn't like us, and the younger youths loved us and went down fighting for us. It was like I will show you original interviews and things that we've done and reviews of the band where the band was called a punk band. It used to mean a different thing way before that stuff happened. The Dolls were a punk band. I don't know how ever we became a punk band, but I guess it was just a movement or something. And Glitter too, and Glam. But so it came to the point where I'd never wind up playing anything that didn't have something to do with the kick of the bass drum live or on record. So bass patterns were based around, if you've got a beat structure that involves, you wouldn't go boom because it's too if the drum is on doing 4/4, you can't go because you're dealing with off times. Don't fool the kids. They want something they can let me lean against that bass and against the drums, and then take me away. And when the riff comes up, just slash it to it. Everybody do the same riff. And that was the concept behind the band. But again, anytime anybody thought that they had the band pegged, we came out with Beth, or Hard Luck Woman, or even things like Christine 16, different kinds of things, but not too many. It was always just one every other album, just to show people that we could do whatever we wanted. And now that we've released our upteenth collection of songs, or whatever, double platinum that the record company wanted to bring out instead of K-Tel, which we didn't argue about, we've come to the point of doing 4 Kiss albums at the same time. We don't really look at them as solo albums so much, because solo albums are departures from the band. I'm not putting out a country and western album. This is a Kiss album. It's got the sensibilities, song structure-wise, of a Kiss song.
Mm-hmm.
I may be doing Mr. Make-Believer, Man of a Thousand Faces, but classic song structure, ABA song structure, they're Kiss songs. You start out with an intro, go right into the first verse. If there's a bridge, the bridge, and then right chorus. And then second verse, chorus, solo, chorus, and out. And to write within that framework and get a song in 3 minutes or under is the hardest thing in the world. Easiest thing to do in the world is start out someplace by strumming a guitar, and you've got a whole side to develop something, and it doesn't, the hardest thing is to cut off all the meat and leave the, cut off all the fat and just leave the meat.
Right.
Any songwriter will tell you the hardest thing to do is to write a memorable, simple song.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest thing in the world. And, there are people that are hired by music song publishing companies, and they're just buildings full of these people that sit there and they try to think melodies that people will remember. Memorable has to do with people that can conceive of melodies. But since this is a guitar playing magazine, and everybody's well aware that you sell millions of copies, of course, you probably wouldn't have done an interview with me otherwise, except for the fact that you want to increase your circulation. No, except for the fact that I'm playing guitar on this album.
Okay, before we get to that,
Yes.
Okay.
Putting the hand up.
Okay, so then you did play a 6-string guitar for a few years then.
Yeah. In fact, when Kiss would be doing, when we'd be doing my tunes on the album, the way we'd figure out how to do it is we'd record the drums with a scratch guitar of me, and I'd be talking through the headset to Peter, our drummer, saying, "All right, now here comes the bridge. 1, 2, 3, switch to 16." And then 1, 2, 3, here comes the 4, 4, 4. And that's the way we would do songs. Once we had the drums down, then everybody would come in with their guitars and just bash away.
Really? All 3 at one time?
Yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh. With obvious separation in case if you make a mistake, but if the feeling's good, you just punch in your part.
So at what point did you change to bass guitar then?
In 1970, 69, 70.
And you've been playing guitar for how long?
3 years.
3 years. Why the switch?
Well, because live in concert, guitarists look a certain way. There's that male-female kind of thing that's developed naturally from guitar players. It's like shaking the hair and preening and doing that kind of thing. And that's got nothing to do with my personality. I would just as soon as bash a guitar over somebody's head as, kind of, subtly move my shoulder back and forth.